Welcome everybody to a new episode of Fuerte como Mujer. Today we have a very special guest. She's a two-time world champion, four times USA national champion in the 63 kilo class currently. The amazing Meghan Scanlon. Hi Meghan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We're so excited to have you here in our show. And we have a ton of questions for you.
Hopefully I'm ready.
Yeah, definitely. You've been on the biggest stage in powerlifting, and we just wanna know how your beginnings were. Like what initially drew you to powerlifting and how did you get started in it?
Yeah, so it was kind of a roundabout way. I was coaching. I coach powerlifters, but even prior to that, I was coaching like strength and conditioning for adults, but also athletes. And I was renting space out of a gym. And in that gym, they had people that were powerlifting. And it was kind of my first introduction to it and the first time that I saw it. Um, Myself at the time, I was really almost doing the opposite. I was doing, like endurance races, marathons, and Ironmans. And when I saw people training for powerlifting, like to lift the most amount of weight that they possibly could and to be as strong as they possibly could, it was something that definitely piqued my interest. And so that's kind of how I initially got introduced to powerlifting and became interested in it. And I'm not going to say like I switched right over and I was sold, but I started to dip my toes both in terms of training, like transitioning my training style and also competing. So the first meet I did was just like a local meet at a gym. I can't even remember what federation, but even after that, it took me another year or so to really start competing regularly and having that be my main training.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's cool. So you did a lot of stuff before you did powerlifting. And
I
you kind
really did.
like from what I saw, you were doing a lot of it at the same time. So
Yes.
what made you decide? And if you could tell our audience, how long have you been doing powerlifting exclusively? And how long
Yeah, I know.
have you with powerlifting?
So I would say that introduction to powerlifting was, I mean, at this point, probably 10 years ago.
Wow.
And then I know, right? And then I probably started competing regularly like 7 years ago. But exclusively powerlifting has really just been the past 3.5 years. So it's almost a newer thing for me
Wow.
to be exclusively powerlifting, which sounds funny since I've been competing for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I do think that's why I've more recently, over the past 3.5 years, just seen this like steady gain, even though I've been in the sport for such a long period of time. And I know that's kind of atypical, but since I've just been exclusively powerlifting and focusing on that, it's definitely paid off for me
Yeah,
on the
definitely.
platform. Yeah, yeah.
So,
But
when was the time, or like in what specific moment or competition, like early on your career, did you realize, like, well, like I think I can go elite on these? Like, you had the strength to go to the bigger level.
yeah, that's a great question. I think so. I went to my first nationals, and I want to say it was 2017. And my first nationals, I mean, I didn't really have any goals except for to do well for myself and like to have a good showing at nationals, and I did. But it definitely planted the seed of, like I think that I will be able to compete on the world level, and I think I could make an international team. So that was actually the year I competed as a 63, but I was a very small 63, and that was the year that kind of like sparked my journey into becoming a 57 so that I could qualify and have an opportunity to go to worlds. So my first nationals was definitely the point in time where I felt I might be able to compete at the world level. And I think I could be like good at this, you know?
Hey, this is my thing.
Yeah, kind of. And I felt like before, like you were saying, I was doing so many different things, and I really was. Even growing up playing sports, I did so many different sports, and it was never that I wasn't able to be competitive at them, but I would try so hard and put so much energy in, and I definitely was never able to compete at an elite level. So having that feeling, and at this point in time, I think I was probably like 29, 30 maybe. So to have that feeling at 29 or 30 was really cool. To at
Amazing.
that point in time be like, wait, I think I could, compete at an elite level, and I think I've finally found my thing.
That's so cool. We're happy to have you in powerlifting.
I'm happy to be here.
Because you were doing, from what I saw on your social media, you were doing weightlifting and powerlifting. And how did you combine both things? Like, how did it
Yeah,
look like?
I know. So I did start weightlifting after I started powerlifting, and kind of that's how I got into weightlifting, through powerlifting. My introduction to weightlifting was through powerlifting. And again, it was a strength sport. It had the appeal of we're trying to move the most amount of weight as possible. For me, it also had the appeal of it's so technical and it's such a beautiful sport. And I did grow up doing gymnastics, which has a lot of similarities to that. So I started training for both, and I was doing a super total program. And honestly, I really enjoyed it and I really loved it. The reason I ended up moving towards exclusively powerlifting was after, having children. It was kind of twofold. Like, one, it was a time thing. I spent a lot of time training when I was training for weightlifting and powerlifting. And then secondarily, I was kind of ending up injured a lot. And especially after having children, sleep is decreased a bit. So the whole recovery piece wasn't as good as prior, which it just made it very hard to do both and do both successfully. And I'm better at powerlifting, so I kind of just decided to put all of my eggs in that basket.
I totally understand. Like, sometimes you just want to do so many things and you're pretty good at all of them. You just gotta focus on one, and we're so happy to have you here in powerlifting. So, can you tell us about, like, when you're training, and how important has been your relationship with your coaches and how they have helped you, shaped you into the person you are today?
Yeah, so I think this is something that has really evolved for me personally over time. Right now, I work with Kelly Mann. She's out of Australia, and I've worked with her for I think almost 3 years at this point. Basically, when I started like exclusively powerlifting, which I think is about 3 years at this fall, and throughout the past 3 years, I feel like I've grown a lot as an athlete, and in the kind of coach athlete relationship. Um, Whereas prior, I was very much the type of athlete that I would just kind of do what I was told, which, you know, to no one's
Yeah.
fault except my own, but that's kind of just how I grew up, right? Like, I was playing sports, and it was kind of like you do what your coach asks of you, and you don't really question it, and you don't necessarily give much feedback either. You're kind of just doing it, trying as hard as you can, which is fantastic. And I think that it's taught me a lot of drive and work ethic. However, I think that it's also led into certain things for me personally over time, especially with powerlifting and working remotely from a coach, like injury and burnout. So over the past 3 years, like learning how to communicate better as an athlete has helped tremendously. And my coach now has kind of helped me come out of that shell of just doing what I'm told and like becoming part of the process. Which again is something that for me over these past couple of years has just helped me to progress, because I've been able to stay healthier, and I've been able to train more consistently, for all of, squat, bench, and deadlift without having to take breaks or get sidetracked or sidelined with different types of injuries.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So you took charge too in the decision making for your training, working together. That sounds really cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely helps because you kind of have to balance life and everything. I mean, mom of two, right? Twins.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a lot at the same time, so you have to balance everything. How do you do that? How do you take, because you're also a coach, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance everything? Be this elite athlete and help other athletes on their journey and balance all your responsibilities in your personal life.
Um, I think it's always a work in progress, and I think knowing that and being okay with that is important. And trying different things to see what works best for you. And that's I think I'm primarily speaking to after becoming like a mother and trying to figure out how everything fits together. There's been a lot of trial and error. I've made a lot of decisions in which it didn't work out well, and kind of led me to reshaping and reframing how a lot of different things would fit together in the best way for me as an athlete and as a coach and as a mom. Something that's cool, been really cool and rewarding for me is kind of over time as my girls have gotten older, allowing them as they want to kind of be involved in the process and being exposed to me training and even being exposed to other athletes like that, I'm watching on video and giving feedback to. Um, I feel lucky that I'm able to do that because it's not just, an example they're seeing happen, say, at home with me training, but they're also seeing like all of these other strong females and males that are training for something that they're passionate about and they have goals. Um, and they're seeing that, you know, one, it's a really cool thing to be strong and lift weights, but like two, you can have these goals that you can train and work hard for um, to try to succeed over time.
Wow, that's amazing. You do such a well job with everything. And like we all know that a lot of this is a lot of mental work. Like you have to prepare yourself mentally for everything. And how do you do that? What do you have any techniques specifically that you use before a big meet or something that you want to work extra hard psychologically for it?
Uh, yeah, I definitely the mental side for me has been huge. I think it's something that has evolved as I've become more comfortable with kind of myself as an athlete and how I compete the best and how I train the best. Because everyone does definitely train and compete differently and thrives in different environments. For me, a huge thing has been bringing what works for me at home and in training to these big meets that are, you know, include travel and are on big platforms and perhaps have more pressure. Being able to kind of simulate what works for me in training and at home on meet day and just following my normal course of I would if I was training has really paid off and just allowing me to perform without feeling necessarily as much pressure or putting as much pressure on myself that I have to change anything to get what I want out of the day. And knowing that like the work that I've put in is the reason I'm going to get what I want out of the day rather than some magical thing I can make happen on meet day.
Trusting the process. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And like
I mean,
really
you put in
leaning
the
into
work.
that.
You have to trust that you put in the work and it's gonna pay off, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Amazing. Yeah, and like, would you say that powerlifting has changed you as a person, not just an athlete, but like as a whole?
Um, Definitely. I definitely think that it has. I mean, it's changed my mindset on so many different things. It's it's definitely shifted a lot of my mindset. And helped me become more confident, I think, in myself and my ideas outside of powerlifting. I think that there's something to be said of allowing yourself like the opportunity and what's relatively low cost, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to fail when I'm competing, but like if I do, what's the worst piece of that? It's just that like I've let myself down. There's nothing really bad that's going to happen, right? But allowing myself the opportunity to work hard for something with failure being a real option, and kind of go after opportunities and see success and see myself come back from failures has made me a lot more confident in other areas of my life where I know that failure is a real there's a real chance of failure, but that it's okay. Like you can work your way through it and you can learn something from it and figure out what you might change the next time. And the next time you'll do it that much better. No matter how many times you fail, like you can always rework and learn from the situation. Um, and that failing's just a part of life, like, and
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, it's okay. Nothing's gonna happen. You can pick yourself back up, move
Mhm.
on. Yeah, that's awesome. Like powerlifting can bring so many good things into your life.
Mhm.
And like you've been on big stages and we're just amazed with your career. And I was wondering, like, what was your strategy when you were preparing yourself for like the last world championships you were on? And how did you feel about your performance there? And how did the meet feel in general? Like, if you can share that.
Yeah. Yeah. So our nationals and worlds relatively close. I think last year there were maybe 10 or 12 weeks separated. And I came off a really strong training block for our national meet. That the actual meet itself, sorry, my dog is chewing my shoes. Um, the actual meet itself was a bit of a down meet just because I ended up getting sick right beforehand. But I knew that the training I'd put in for nationals would just compound itself leading into a world. So I just had to follow the course. We knew what was working and we just had to follow that and continue to basically show up and work hard, but we knew where it would go. So I felt very confident with the training that I had kind of for 2 whole training cycles, both going into my national meet and then into worlds, that I was going to have a good meet, for myself. And like showing up at worlds, I feel like with each year gaining more experience of simple things like how to do the travel the best and you know, how I function the best even when you're abroad, right? And kind of what I
Yeah.
mean by that is like you're out of your routine. I'm such a routine person, and you're very much out of your routine.
Yeah.
So you're there for 3-4 days prior to competing. What are those days going to look like for you? And how can you use them to best serve your performance once you get to the platform? Um, so I feel like over the past 4 times that I've been to the world, each time I learned something a little bit more. And this time I was very comfortable with both the travel and being there and knowing what I wanted to do a few days out, and training. And when I got to the meet itself, I kind of treated it like another training day, like another big session. I do SBD sessions, so it was like another big SBD session. Um, and I usually know when I get under the barbell for squats and start squatting, warming up, and loading a red, loading 2 reds. By that point, I usually know how the day is going to go based off of how the weight feels on my back. And as the weight kept adding to the bar, I knew it was going to be a good day, and that all I had to do was to go execute, which of course is no small feat. Like I don't want to make that sound like a small feat at
Yeah.
all when you are competing, and it's not. And this is going to sound so funny, but this is kind of like the point that I've gotten to. I walked out to the platform for my first squat attempt, and in my head, I actually said to myself, "The garage gym looks nice today. I just have a few friends here too." like kind of setting the scene. Obviously, I'm not in my garage gym, nowhere close to it. And there's many people in the stands, whereas typically it's either just me or me and 2 3-year-olds. But just to kind of remind myself and like ground myself that although the platform is much different today, it's really no different than when I am training. And all I have to do is what I've done thousands of times in my garage. And it's kind of just helped me prepare myself for what I think is the hardest lift of the meet, which is the first squat. And I feel like once you get that under your belt, you can kind of start rolling. But yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I bet. Because it must be so scary if you actually think of the place. By getting yourself back to your everyday in your mind just helps you focus. And it's like, I've done this before. I can do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And just it allows you to stay in the moment a little bit more. The more you can be present, the better you can enjoy it and the better off you are. Once you start living in the future, it just like kicks up the anxiety and kicks up the nerves, and there's nothing you can do about that except perform in the moment. It's like the best way to affect the future. But it's definitely a challenging thing to stay present, but once you figure out like how to do that for yourself, it pays dividends.
Definitely. Wow, that's awesome. And you talked before a little bit about having a lot of like injuries before when you were like trying to do so many things at the same time.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome that? Like once you face yourself with an injury or just like bad weeks training, like how do you get over that slump, What's your strategy? We want to know.
I know. So I'm going to be very, very honest. My first meet back after having my girls, I ended up actually tweaking my hamstring pretty bad, and was kind of in between if I wanted to continue powerlifting or not. It's also when I took a step back for a couple months, and then I ended up started to work with my coach and just exclusively powerlift. And with that was a lot of reworking some of my lifts, and changing my positioning and strengthening my posterior chain so that we could minimize the risk of running into injury all the time. And that has helped tremendously. But beyond that, kind of knowing, like now, if I feel, say, the signs coming, what to do, like to get ahead of it, and knowing that if I do get a little niggle or like a little strain or something and we jump on it right away, kind of knowing what the process is going to look like week over week, because it is very similar. I feel like if you have something, maybe like some injury or something that usually bugs you, especially as you get heavier into meet preps, obviously the risk is a bit higher, unfortunately, as you get closer to meets. But kind of knowing how it takes its course has helped me a lot going into meets that maybe I don't feel 100% physically, but I know the course it will take over time, if that makes sense, just because I've been there before.
Yeah, it's like you know what's coming and you just get on it right away.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And helping yourself every way that you can, and knowing that just because it feels terrible today doesn't mean it's going to feel that way in 3 days, and doesn't mean it's going to feel that way in a week from now. So just reminding myself, and I actually do this a lot with my lifters too, when they do have different things pop up. Say it happens, let's say Thursday, like, okay, feel it, take your 24 hours, and then just kind of track, like, how do you feel 3 days from now? And are you feeling a fair amount better? Then in another 3 days, you're probably going to feel even better. And just kind of knowing that just because it's bad on one day, don't, similar to competing, right? Like, don't extrapolate that as you're going to be in pain for X amount of time, especially if you're on top of doing the things to take care of yourself as well. And seeing, if you have to see a PT or whoever you work with, like as a health professional to help you as well. And just knowing that like that will compound and like you'll feel better and better and better and better. I feel like helps keep you out of that dark space where you get caught in, I'm in so much pain. I'm always in so much pain. When is this? Yes, exactly. When is this ever going to end? Like, because the more you can say, I don't want to say like falsely positive, but like have that realistic mindset of knowing that it's not, like you're saying, like it's not something to spiral about. You're not going down this dark hole. Like you will start to feel better. The better off you'll be too, because I feel like the more you can help yourself, and the more action you can take rather kind of than getting stuck.
Yeah, that's so true. Definitely. Because you get like on a mindset sometimes, it's just like, oh man, I'm never gonna feel better. No, this is not gonna work. Am I serious or not? But yeah, just like have to accept it, do something about it, and keep on checking. Are we doing it?
100%. Yeah, and it's so hard because we work so hard for 9 attempts. So it's so hard, especially if it's close to a meet. But like you're saying, like there's always some action you can take. And I feel like knowing what that action is and taking steps will always help you feel better.
Yeah. And like from all of your time as a powerlifter, what has been your biggest challenge so far?
Oh,
Oh.
that's a good question. Oh man, my biggest challenge so far. I think it's changed over time. It's definitely changed over time. I think that, you know, prior to having children, my biggest challenge was burnout, but burnout related to having too much of my identity just wrapped into being a power lifter, which sounds simple now. But in the moment, I didn't even know that. You know what I mean? Like I was so invested in what I was doing that I didn't even realize necessarily why I was feeling so burnt out. Whereas now, after having children, I've definitely just had a mindset shift in obviously my identity as a person, never mind a lifter. But it's helped me kind of take that step back, and not take anything for granted. And I think that now the hardest part, honestly, has mostly to do with like just like guilt of the time that I take to train.
Yeah, I understand completely.
So it's definitely shifted. But the difference now is that's the hardest part. But I realize what powerlifting gives me and the opportunities that I have through powerlifting and how grateful I am to powerlift. Like those things are so powerful. So it's something I feel like that I'm continually working through.
Yeah.
But as my girls have gotten older, it's also gotten easier because they understand and they think they like to be involved more. And they like to watch powerlifting meets when I have people competing or like big powerlifting meets that are on. They like to watch too. So it's definitely gotten easier as time has gone on.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so sweet too. I want my kids to watch meets with me.
Yeah, I was like, we're gonna watch. I'm always saying like my friends, even if whether I've never met them before or not, everyone that's lifting, I'm always calling them my friends. So they're always down for it.
That's cool. And like for new powerlifters, like me, I'm pretty new at powerlifting, so if you could give me any advice at all, like your 2 cents, what would it be?
I really, again, I feel like this is something that's easier to say than to do, but also easy or for me to say because I've been powerlifting for a long period of time, and kind of seeing it play out. But to try not to put the cart in front of the horse and like try not to put so much pressure on yourself, at the beginning, and really just enjoy the process and lean into that process. And at the beginning, you're going to see a lot of strength gains. But also knowing that when it slows down, like that's okay. Like that's normal and it's a part of the process. And what's cool is it kind of becomes a giant puzzle. And as the puzzle, you start to find how the puzzle pieces fit together best for you, you'll continually progress for such a long period of time. I think a lot of the reason that I'm seeing success now is just the length of time that I've been doing it is so great. But that you can see continual progress and success over a long period of time when you do truly fall in love with the process and with the sport.
Enjoying it. That's
yeah.
Thank you for the advice. It's a reminder that we need a lot of times. Like, dude, just enjoy the process. Just hold on.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go from 0 to 10 in 2 seconds, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sometimes like
your dog.
hello. You know, like I feel like we all have our own individual goals as we enter the sport of powerlifting. And I think that's so important. I think that's a really great thing. I think sometimes it becomes challenging if we put deadlines on ourselves or these strict timelines on ourselves where it just adds pressure, you know? And I think that having a framework and guidelines are important and a loose timeline, but just knowing things are fluid, like life happens, for instance. You never know what's going to happen. So knowing that just because it doesn't happen in a certain amount of time doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And kind of just allowing it to come to you without forcing it, I think can just make the enjoyment go up so much greater. And when you're, oh my goodness, when you're having fun,
it's so cute.
things always go better when you're having fun and you're enjoying what you're doing. And it doesn't mean you're not working hard, but when you're enjoying things and you're working hard, it's like that secret sauce that will just allow you to progress and allow you to continually show up, even when things aren't so good. And even when life is a little bit harder, it allows you to have that space for yourself that you kind of know what to expect and you know it's going to be there for you.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, definitely. It's like sometimes we forget, you know, that we need to we can make goals, we can have goals, but life is life. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get there, but you have to try to enjoy the process, enjoy the.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, cool. So now looking forward a little bit to the future, what can we expect from Meg in your future meets, and what does that look like? What next meet do you have coming up that you're looking forward to? And what does it look?
Yeah, so I feel like 2025 should be a pretty fun year. I feel like this year has kind of been setting the stage for 2025 for me personally. So I kind of feel like it's been a year and a half in the making to be able to have some opportunities that I will have next year. So the next meet I'll do will be Sheffield, and then hopefully after that I'll do Worlds, and then after that will be World Games. So kind of like the trifecta.
That's good. Next year.
Which I'm very, very excited about and very grateful to have the opportunity to be in this position to compete on the biggest stages. And I just, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of just riding the train at this point. Kind of like everything is gravy at this point. Like I've accomplished a lot of things that I wanted to, and I've had so many great experiences, but I still know there's more in the tank, and I'm still seeing progress in training and meet to meet. So I'm just riding the train for as long as possible.
See you there. We'll be logging in to see all those meets, and we hope that you have really an amazing time and lots of PRs.
Yeah, me too.
So one of our staffers was like, I need to know. So please ask her. I need to know what's her zodiac sign. Like she always asks this question. And she wanted to know.
That's so funny. I'm like, does she have a guess? No. I'm a Pisces. I'm kind of on the cusp, but I am a Pisces.
Me too.
Yeah.
Happy people, see?
Yeah.
Well, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Like, what are your goals even further to the future? Or do you have that or not?
In like sorry, did you say 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know. I've like thought about it and not thought about it. I've thought about it with flexibility. I definitely, I mean, in terms of powerlifting, I think that I just want to kind of continue to like push my limits and see how far I can take it. Um, I definitely think that I want like to be able, like next year would be cool to like break someone's records and like push my total up in general. And I think next year's cool too, because if all goes well and I qualify for the world's team, next year will be my 5th time going to worlds, which I feel like is really cool.
Cool.
So that's kind of like a special thing, that like I never thought would happen. But beyond next year, as an athlete, just continuing to grow. I think I don't necessarily have any like specific goals. I do think that like every athlete at some point, there will be a time where I no longer am able to match the progress that is made by those of the next generation of powerlifters. And I don't know what I will do when that time comes. I'll almost be a master's lifter. So there's a potential to go in that direction, or I could see myself like trying, like picking up weightlifting again, or something like that, but it definitely, like I'm not willing to rush the process. Like I want to ride out the experience that I'm having and to continue to push the envelope for myself and also the kind of like the weight class, the 63 weight class, just continue to push the envelope. But yeah, I haven't really thought about specific goals, I guess.
That's good. That it's okay. Everybody should be living in the moment and just enjoying everything. So that's amazing. I congratulate you with your amazing career and everything. You have accomplished so much, and it's just amazing to see everything. Just wow.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's honestly like some of my thoughts at this point. Like I have had so many experiences I never thought I would have and been able to do and accomplish a lot of different things that were kind of beyond what I originally like had in mind when I started powerlifting. So I feel like everything at this point is just it's kind of just like gravy. Like it's just fun, and I don't mean that in that I'm working any less hard, but that I also understand like the point I'm in my career in which like I'm able to chase some things because I have nothing to lose. I really don't, so kind of just all fun.
Put it all out there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And it's been truly an honor to speak with you and learn from you. And before we let you go, we would love to give you some space if you want to share some words of encouragement or any tips you would like to share with the community and our audience. And Also, who you would love to see next on this podcast. So,
Man.
yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. I came so
Yeah.
underprepared. Well, I mean, I think overall, and I guess like one of the reasons that I like not necessarily speaking as an athlete, but like love to coach is that I truly do feel, and I felt this for myself, but that powerlifting and the sport in general just has so much to give us. Um, both kind of teach us lessons, right? Like over time that we can take into our life with us, but also it's kind of there for us, right? Like when life doesn't go so well. Both the community and the sport itself, like it's something to lean into and to kind of appreciate throughout life during all different times. And I think that being able to experience strength as a female is a really, really special thing. And I'm glad that I've kind of had the opportunity to find the sport and to compete in a strength sport as well as coach a lot of strong females that have kind of taught me so much. So I guess I'm not sure what the message is here other than if you are thinking about powerlifting or getting into a strength sport, I couldn't recommend it more. And if you are in it, just realizing like how special it is to be a part of the community and how strong you are and how strong each individual is in their own way is a really, really cool thing. Who do I think you should have on the podcast? You know, who I'm going to give a shout out because they just had a fantastic performance at Junior Worlds. And speaking of next generation, I mean, there was a lot of fantastic performances. I know it's still going on at Junior Worlds. There's so many impressive young individuals competing and making rapid progress. But since I'm from the US, Jess Espinal, I need to give her a huge shout out. She competed at 47 and then she won Junior Worlds and also broke the open world record, which is a very cool thing. And I feel like it was just a matter of time for her, but I was happy, really, really happy to see her do it.
Yeah, we'll try to contact her. That would be amazing to have her on
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for all your advice. I'm gonna take everything into consideration too, and I hope it helps out the people in our audience. We are mostly based in Spanish-speaking countries, and we are starting to reach out to more English speakers. So let's hope this community in this podcast grows. And thank you so much for being part of it. And yeah, till next time. And I hope you do amazing at your next meets, and we'll be watching and cheering you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye bye. And
Bye.